midnight hour is upon us. It's time once again for two internet strangers to discuss the good and evil of the horror genre. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the terror within the Hallow-Holics Anonymous podcast.
About this moonlit night, these foggy moors, and the sound of distant howling that just makes you appreciate nature. Don't you agree?
You can talk. You don't have a big gaping wound in your leg right now from a vicious dog bite.
That's the risk you take when you travel to a generic Irish, British, Scottish village. Come on, I think I see a tavern up ahead.
Wait. Before we find safety and life-saving medical assistance, we need to do the podcast.
Oh, you're right. I'm Corey.
I'm Maddie. And this is Hallow-Holics Anonymous, a show dedicated to all things horror and occasionally Halloween. In this episode, we decided to discuss two somewhat opposing films, Wolf from 1994 and Cujo from 1983. The one thing that unifies them is that both involve a dog or wolf of some kind.
But and we'll get to this later, but they are really almost exactly the opposite movies. It's that dawned on me as I was watching yours at 8 o'clock this morning.
Yeah, they really are. Like dramatically, thematically, everything about them is just absolutely... It makes you wonder why we picked these two movies to go together in one podcast episode.
'Cause puppies.
At any rate, both of them do reflect on one similar concept. Dogs are man's best friend.
Until they're not.
Exactly.
Werewolves kind of fit into the whole Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing and the duality of man kind of thing. On one hand, you've got civilization. If this was the Victorian times when Jekyll and Hyde was written, you'd have repression, very buttoned up people, that kind of thing. So on one hand, you've got civilization, and on the other hand, you have the primal. Two very different things that are always sort of fighting inside of us and we're trying to control because we are animals as well as we are people. Our thumbs are the only things that really brought us to where we are.
I'll get into it later, but I believe that Wolf really did try to tackle that concept and failed.
Yeah, I'm actually, that's why I paused right there. I'm trying to think. Wolf kind of failed. But we'll get back to that. But yeah, I think that werewolf movies and Jekyll and Hyde, anything that has the Hulk, anything that has to do with someone turning into something violent or more animalistic is trying to tap into our innate fear of the animal inside of us and the fact that we're no longer really in touch with that side of ourselves anymore.
And you could make the point that both of these films are kind of about the duality of nature. On the one hand, Wolf approaches it from a more metaphorical fantasy horror viewpoint, while Cujo is pretty brutal, taking something that could realistically happen and really emphasizing the contrast between sort of man's best friend and then man's worst enemy, Cujo.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I mean, Cujo starts at, well, we'll get to Cujo when it's time to get to Cujo. But yeah, you're right.
We'll hold our horses or dogs or leashes, whatever you want to call it. But before we get into any of that, we've got some horror news to talk about. Michael Mann's next project is going to be about Paul LaRue, a famous murderer. Michael Mann is known for Black Hat, Heat, Manhunter, Thief. He's pretty involved in sort of the crime film scene, so it'll be interesting to see what he does with that.
What are you talking, the Manhunter that was the Hannibal, the Red Dragon version movie? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I dig him. That might be all right. I don't know the killer, though, which is weird for me. I have way too much serial killer knowledge trapped in my poison brain. And I don't know this guy. I might just have forgotten him. I'll have to look him up.
He's not your typical psychological serial killer. He's involved globally in Iran, North Korea, all sorts of terrorist groups. He's linked to drug production, distribution, arms trade, murder for hire. He's basically a supervillain.
Oh, okay.
So, I'd imagine if Michael Bay were directing this, there'd be plenty of explosions, but hopefully Michael Mann is going to take a much more muted approach.
Yeah, I have faith in that being kind of cool. So I have 2 pieces, unless you have more.
I do have more, but I'd like to hear yours as well.
Okay, well, let's do every other one then.
All right.
So my first piece is the movie He Never Died. Have you seen it?
I've started it once.
Oh, you didn't finish it. It's so good.
I'm going to try again. I'm just not fond of the actor.
You don't like Henry Rollins? Okay, if you don't like Henry Rollins, that might be a problem, but I've been a fan of Henry Rollins since he was just a young punk rocker. So that could be part of it too. But there's a sequel in the works called She Never Died. Henry Rollins starred in the original as what seemed to be an immortal cannibal, but by the end we find out otherwise. I'm not going to ruin it because I really think it's a damn good movie and I think everybody should see it and go in fairly fresh. She Never Died apparently will have a female protagonist, and I can only assume she'll be playing a similar character to Rollins, which again I can't tell you anything about. He will not be returning for the sequel, but apparently there's a television spin-off of his further adventures as his character in that universe. So I'm pretty stoked for that.
I know it's definitely become a sort of a cult classic. Speaking of movies, the new Blumhouse film, and I love Blumhouse, they are producing some amazing independent films. Truth or Dare is getting really good reviews. That's not an extensive sort of horror news note, but it's definitely worth knowing.
See, I brushed that one off because I thought it was just going to be some kind of teen horror. It was going to be another I Know What You Did Last Summer or something, but... Well,
I won't lie. I have like all 3 I Know What You Did Last Summers on DVD on my shelf, but I'll talk
I'm
about
not saying I didn't have...
later.
Okay. I mean, I think I've only seen the first one, and I had fun watching it, but there's only so much of that I can take, especially with all the young adult television I watch. All right, so my next piece is very depressing to me as a gamer. Well, it's depressing to me as a console gamer, but as I am talking in front of a very nice gaming PC and an even nicer gaming laptop right now, it's also good news. The video game Agony, which from what I understand, I haven't been following the development because I want to go into the game surprised. It looks to be sort of like a first-person, maybe slightly first-person shooter, Tour of Hell. It's going to be censored on consoles, but not on PC. So it looks like the PC Master Race is going to win this one.
Censored, huh?
Yeah, I guess that no content is going to be censored, but they're going to be changing camera angles in order for the game to get an M rating, as opposed to, I didn't even know this existed, but there's something called an AO rating, where M stands for mature, obviously, AO stands for adult only, and that's like the NC-17 of video game ratings, and consoles won't approve games with anything over an M rating. Yeah, and based on what I've seen in video games, it can't have anything to do with gore, so it must be... I mean, I know in some of the demo stuff I saw, I remember seeing some strange nudity, so that might be what's getting cut out of consoles, but I mean, who knows? We'll just have to wait and see. I just think it's unfortunate that we still live in a world where stuff like that needs to be censored, because it has, especially games like Agony, have really elevated to an art form rather than just a video game. And I don't think people are looking past the dollar signs to see that.
Well, I also think that this isn't the 1980s. A vast majority of the gaming group, they're not kids anymore. They grew up with the video games, and therefore you've got a much larger, mature audience to cater to than you would have in, like, say, 1984.
Yeah, that's true. But again, more of my experience playing video games. I play a lot of asymmetrical multiplayer games, which is Friday the 13th, the game, Dead by Daylight. You have one killer searching for 4 or 5 survivors. The killers are super strong, the survivors are weak, but they still have stuff that they can fight the killers with. And you would be surprised how many kids are actually playing these games. I don't know if it's just parents not understanding or if it's parents not caring, but that's part of the problem too. If kids are going to be playing these games, parents are going to complain about this instead of monitoring their children. So consoles, especially since kids have access to consoles easier than PCs, because no self-respecting parent, I would not let a kid touch my system. No way.
Well, Mom and Dad, that's the reason video games and movies have rating systems in the first place, so you can look at it and decide whether or not you want to pick it up off the shelf and give it to your kid.
Yeah, so monitor your kids' internet, folks. Come on.
In other news, this will be my last piece of news for the evening. Joe Hill, Stephen King's son, his fantasy novel NOS4A2 has been given a series order by AMC. It's going to be a 10-episode season, and I guess we'll see if it's popular. It might get more.
Sci-fi or horror? That sounds very sci-fi.
It's fantasy horror.
Well, I am out of news.
Let's do the Stephen pre-memorial Guess That Death game.
Hi, Stephen. Glad you're not dead yet.
For my first question, most men would have given their wives a scarlet letter for moving on. This guy seemed to think stripping off his own skin was a better idea.
Huh.
And remember, the theme of the game is dogs and wolves.
It's the only problem is the only time I can remember somebody turning into a wolf when removing their skin is in that Netflix horror show that everybody hated except me.
I didn't hate it.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't remember what it's called, but I remember what you're talking about.
Oh, that's going to drive me nuts. Yeah. What was it called?
No, this guy doesn't eat his skin.
Okay. Oh, that does sound familiar, though. Cat people. No. Yes, maybe. People? That's
operative term in cat people is cat. So no.
Son of a bitch. Can I have a hint?
Okay, Sarah Patterson and Neil Jordan.
That doesn't help.
Neil Jordan, you may recall for the visually lust production of Interview with a Vampire.
Huh.
So think of a film that's visually stunning and a guy strips his own skin off.
I'm going to punch myself in the face when you tell me what this is, because I know what you're talking about. And if I had like a half hour to think about it, I could probably pry it out of my brain.
You want the answer?
Give me one more second.
Okay. All right. Take your time. You're Among Friends.
Thank you. I appreciate the reassurance. Yeah, I got to give up.
The Company of Wolves. Only one of the most gorgeous fairy tale werewolf movies of all time.
It is absolutely great. I forgot about that movie entirely.
Yeah, and Sarah Patterson, I believe, is the one who plays the main girl.
I just watched that like a year ago, too.
Oh, it's such a good movie. All right, yeah. So 1 Maddie, 0 Corey. Corey?
Yep.
Give us your question.
All right. The family that feeds people to their dogs is the family that stays together, though they didn't count on feeding it a ninja lady. This might be a little easy for you because I kind of went with creative questions instead of hard answers a little bit, but we'll see.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. The family that feeds people to their dogs is the family that stays together, though they didn't count on feeding it a ninja lady.
Give me a hint.
What kind of hint would you like?
An actor.
You can have I'll walk on the razor's edge and give you Ali Larder.
This doesn't sound familiar at all.
Doth thou give up?
I give up.
Resident Evil Extinction.
Oh, man. I knew you'd get me on a zombie movie. All right.
Yeah, towards the beginning, she stumbles on a family of sort of post-apocalyptic hillbillies that are feeding people to these zombie dogs. But it's actually one of my favorites in the series, which says a lot because I hate most of them.
I thought you were about to say because you're sick and twisted, but...
That too.
All right, 1-1. Next question from me, Corey. Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Apparently, you're never safe from a werewolf, even when he's long dead. Maybe don't piss off the foreman when you've got a monster's skeleton right behind you.
Oh, I'm starting to hate you with these questions.
Why?
Because you're getting really good at tapping into, like, this part of my brain that knows I've seen it, but doesn't remember when, where, or anything about it.
I will say that one of the actors in it is a second degree from being actually famous.
That doesn't count as my hint.
Okay, no, it doesn't, but I thought it was funny to say.
It is funny to say. A second degree. Was that a Kevin Bacon reference, you being vaguely Kevin Baconish?
No.
Huh.
I don't know how many degrees he is from Kevin Bacon. I'll have to count.
All right.
You know what? I'm going to say he is actually kind of 2 degrees from Kevin Bacon. Yeah.
Most people are. Mm-hmm. 2 degrees away from famous. Wolf bones.
Wolf bones is like the best, most obvious hint I could give you.
Is it a werewolf movie?
Yeah. It most definitely is.
Okay. Say the hint again. And when I mean hint, I mean the whole question, not just the second degrees thing.
Apparently, you're never safe from a werewolf, even when he's long dead. Maybe don't piss off the foreman when you've got a monster's skeleton right behind you.
Oh, man, I can see this thing. It's got meat on it still. It's not just the skeleton. Am I right there?
No.
Oh. Then I have... give me a hint. Give me... did you already give me a hint? I forget.
Do you want me to give you the real hint?
Yeah, give me the real hint.
Joe Estevez.
Oh, man. No, I don't know. I'm getting him confused with Joe Dante.
Okay.
I give up.
Just so you know, the reason I say he's I originally said he was 2 degrees from being famous is because everyone else in his family is famous, including his nephew, Emilio.
Oh, shit.
Movie... Actually, I gave you the answer in the question. It's Werewolf from 1996, the epically awful movie that was riffed on by Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Huh, I haven't seen that. This werewolf skeleton thing must be from something else. I wonder if I got that from Werewolf the series. Should I watch the MST3K version or should I watch the actual version? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
You will not survive the night if you don't.
Okay. All right, so I'm up.
Maddie 2, Corey 1.
Yes, ma'am. Bats and wolves are apparently mortal enemies. This often translates to their mythical counterparts. This carnival of carnage pits them both against each other in a winner-takes-all death match. 2 beasts enter, 1 beast leaves.
Okay, I'm immediately going to need a hint because I have no clue what you're talking about.
All right, hold on. Let me just type into my Hintatron 5000 for a minute. Yes. And learn how my new mouse works. All right, there we go. It's got an inverted touchpad, so it confuses me. I'm trying not to cheat because this one's hard enough. Hold on a second. Let me see if this might be a good one. I just got to make sure I have the right actor. Oh, that's not him. As soon as I find the actual actor that might help you with this.
Hint for your own question? Yeah,
here we go. Bruce Payne is he's the protagonist.
I don't know. Vampire Circus.
Is that your final answer?
Yeah.
No, it was Howling 6, The Freaks.
Oh, you suck.
Yeah. That's actually one of my favorite Howling movies. It's not good, but the vampire makeup is pretty cool at the end. Yeah, it's an interesting movie. I recommend it.
Okay, so this one's going to be another quotation question.
But we're tied because we suck at this, not because we're good at this. Let's just make sure the audience knows that.
Who is the werewolf? Who is the werewolf? You have 30 seconds to figure it out.
Is this a movie or a game?
It's a movie.
All right. I thought maybe you were trying to cheat and do Werewolves Within. So are there lines like that in the film, or is it a murder mystery that... Okay. Give me a hint. I'm not going to get it, but give me a hint.
Peter Cushing.
Wheel of Werewolf.
No, but I like the idea.
That'd be a pretty cool game show.
All right. Do you give up? Is that your final answer?
I super give up.
The Beast Must Die from 1974. A rich man invites several strangers to his mansion on an island, and then he basically tells them one of them is a werewolf, and he's going to figure it out. He's gotten tired of hunting regular game, and he wants something a little more challenging. Then at the end of the film, after the mystery, you're given a werewolf break to figure out who the werewolf is before the twist is revealed.
Yeah, I've never seen that, but I've always wanted to. I heard about that movie. I obsess about werewolves once a year, and last year's obsession turned up that movie, and I haven't gotten a chance to watch it yet.
It's one of my favorites.
Nice.
Of course, what was say that about every movie.
The Beast Within?
The Beast Must Die from 1974.
Mm-hmm. All right, let me write that down. I want to watch that.
Yeah, one of Amicus Pictures' actually better films.
All right. My turn. A thin pane of glass isn't enough to stop these evil pups. Never investigate a haunted mansion without eyes in the back of your head and someone to have your back.
Hound of the Baskervilles?
Final answer?
Yeah. Well.
Nope, Resident Evil.
No. Stop doing that! So we're tied?
We are tied. We might have to think of scoring. I know that when we originally started this, we were just going to do, like, you wanted to do points if we won. You know what? No, I think it's more fun this way.
Yeah.
Because it makes the it makes everything a little more heated.
With
I like
every
this.
episode, the listeners learn how uninformed we both are.
Yeah, how terrible we are at this horror movie thing.
How do I break this down? He cheats on his wife, melts into a puddle of goo, wolfs out, and gets burnt alive in a church. There's no clever way to put this into a metaphor.
He turns into the puddle of goo before he wolfs out?
Yes.
I'm going to need a hint.
John Hugh. And that's spelled Hough.
Yeah. It's not Wolf Cop. No, couldn't be Wolf Cop.
No, there's no exploding privates in this one.
Is this is it a comedy?
No, which makes it kind of sad that it's not a comedy.
Yeah. All right, then I reluctantly give up on this one, too.
Absolutely. One of the most ridiculous scenes in cinematic history, trying to be intimidating and becoming laughable. I did tell you there was no clever way to put this into a metaphor, but it's Howling 4.
Oh, that was good. That was a good, like, little secret hint. Is Howling 4 the Wolf Orgy one, or is that 3?
It's 1...
No, there's like
there's sex in all of them, isn't there?
Yeah, but there's one where there's like this cheesy goth band like playing at the Wolf Orgy. I forget which one it was.
Part 4 is the one where the whole town is secretly werewolves. Spoilers.
Oh, the marsupials.
No. That's when they're in Australia and the babies are in pouches when they're born.
Thank you for explaining what a marsupial is to me. I appreciate it.
Well, apparently they're werewolf kangaroos. I don't know. Part 3 is weird.
Yeah, part 3. I mean, they're all pretty weird after 1.
But no, just the way, like, look up the scene at some point of that, like, melting werewolf transformation in Howling 4. It's ridiculous and it does not end.
Okay. All right, so Maddie 4, Corey 3 at the moment. This may be the easiest of the bunch. Maybe the second easiest of the bunch.
So help me if it's another Resident Evil.
No, I will tell you I am out of Resident Evils. When trapped in a remote cabin, these dogs of war will stop at nothing to kill or can fuck shit you.
I hope they don't do that.
No, not in this one, but yeah, you got it. Before I even finish the question.
Well, come on. It's funny because I was trying to debate how I wanted to throw that one into my questions before I was like, oh, that's too easy.
Well, I thought it was too easy too, but we couldn't do this without mentioning Dog Soldiers, because Dog Soldiers is one of the greatest werewolf movies. It's right up there with American Werewolf in London for me.
On such an unbelievably low budget that it's absolutely incredible. It's up there as far as horror films go. It's up there in like 28 Days Later. It's that good. It's in that class.
Oh yeah, no doubt. And this is the same dude. He went on to make The Descent, right? Which was another fantastic movie. Mm-hmm. I think I'm right on that. If I'm wrong, audience, you can feel free to tweet at me that I'm an idiot.
Yeah, or email him at length as well.
Yeah, please, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll give you the email at the end of the episode. So you can write a passionate dissertation towards Corey if he's wrong. All right.
Is it your turn or did you win?
Yes, my last question.
Okay, so technically you won, but
yeah. Well, unless you get this one right and I get the next one wrong.
That's true.
This little piggy went to the market. This little piggy stayed home. This little piggy had roast beef. This little piggy fell all the way down into a fountain naked.
Is it newer?
No.
Shit. That's not what I'm thinking of. Hint.
Tracy Lind.
I can't picture her.
If it helps, she's absolutely beautiful.
That does not help. Like, I recognize the name, and I'm afraid to look her up. Okay, I'm going to look her up, and if the name of the movie comes up...
No, you can't do that. You cannot do that.
I can't, to see what she looks like?
It's going to be too obvious if you don't already know her off the top of your head. I didn't look up Willem Dafoe.
That's a good point. All right, I give up.
Fright Night 2.
Fuck.
And okay, we agreed this was about dogs and wolves, and werewolves. So
no, you're right. You're right.
Okay, all right, because he's still not a werewolf.
Yeah, I had a feeling you were going to pull this too, because I considered pulling the same bullshit. There's no way I will actually have two more, because I always have my little tiebreaker. All right, so this one you are definitely not going to get. When hunting punk rockers, never forget the neighborhood could be full of wild dogs that haven't eaten in almost as long as the homeless children you're here to murder.
Is it new?
No. But let me ask you this real quick. Were you involved in any punk rock scene at any time of your life? Even then, you're a little young for it.
I'm a Central Texas Catholic. What do you think?
That's what. Okay. Yeah. There's no reason you'd get this, because this movie would be so far off your radar.
Yeah. I don't know. Black Roses?
No, it's a movie called Suburbia. It actually has Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers in it.
Oh, I love Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah. It's about a kid and his brother who flee an abusive home to go live in an abandoned suburb in a squat with a bunch of punk rockers, and like the people who live down the way from it are tired of it, so they like go punk hunting and stuff. It's a ridiculous movie, but I can't believe you just told me, well, you weren't in the scene, so you probably wouldn't know this one. I didn't want to say it like that. I just wanted to I swear I wasn't being elitist. I was just trying to I was telling you how impossible nobody's seen this movie if they weren't at least. Yeah, it is. It's a cool movie, but nobody's seen it if they haven't heard from another punk or Death Rock Kid.
Hey, I love to pull tricks on people, get them to watch stuff like Rocktober Blood. So, I mean, I like some of those old metal horror films from the 80s.
I used to leave VHS copies of Blood-Sucking Freaks at random people's houses.
Nice.
Just to get their reaction down the road when they discovered it. I had 5 copies that just leave places. It was ridiculous. All right. So do you want my tiebreaker?
Sure.
All right. This one I think might be pretty easy. This vampire dog has probably killed hundreds during its time on Earth, but it's no match for one wisecracking vampire hunter.
Wisecracking?
It's a Pomeranian.
Dude, I have no clue.
Blade Trinity. It's Ryan Reynolds' character gets into a fight with a vampire Pomeranian. It's hilarious.
I blocked part 2 and 3 out. The only one that happened was part 1.
I don't know. I love 2 because Ron Perlman and Benicio del Toro, and I really like the costuming and just the grit in that one.
Well, if
3,
I excused every Benicio del Toro and Ron Perlman movie that was a pile of crap just because they were in it.
Oh, wait, did I say Benicio del Toro? I meant Guillermo del Toro. I'm sorry. Yeah, he's the one that directed. Wait, no, he didn't.
Yeah, he did.
I'm looking that up because it's not that I don't trust you, Maddie, but I don't trust you, Maddie.
Oh, no, you're right. He didn't.
Yeah, he only did 2, right?
I thought he did all 3.
Mm-mm.
Well, I'm not going to excuse every bad movie that Guillermo del Toro does.
No, I don't blame you. He was responsible for that sort of vampire movie, the Vampire Holocaust TV show that's been going on that I think just ended.
Strain?
Yeah.
Oh, it's not that bad. It's too much.
Yeah, I didn't hate it. I just think that the characters are just entirely too cartoony for me.
I mean, I do like how he experiments with what a vampire is, and he did that with Kronos as well. So, I mean, I can appreciate that.
Oh, Kronos was a great flick. Yeah. Slow flick, but great flick.
Yeah, I just wasn't into Blade 3, and I really thought Blade 2 ruined the idea of Whistler. I liked the idea at the end of the first film that he killed himself. Bringing him back kind of ruins the tragedy of the first film.
Yeah, well, Whistler actually, they cut out, he was supposed to come back in the first one, too. You were supposed to see him from far off, but they cut that out. So there actually is a cut scene of Whistler coming back. So it's kind of canon, I guess, and it happens in the comics, too, if I remember correctly. But yeah, I get your point, and I agree with you.
Now that we've had our little debate about Blade 3 and gone way off topic, I really wanted to put this one off. After I started it, I remembered it, and I was like, oh, God, what have I done to myself yet again?
Oh, see, I had the exact opposite reaction. I'm like, oh, man, I'm going to fucking hate Wolf. I'm going to watch it at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday just so I barely remember it. And I actually kind of enjoyed it. I'll talk about why it sucks, but I actually kind of enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, it has its good points, which are really good, and then it has its bad points, and we'll get into that. For those who haven't watched it, Wolf from 1994, a year of some pretty fantastic film releases, kind of went under the radar for the most part. And before I actually describe the film, I'd like to describe the video cover I have of it, because I do have the VHS.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but after you do that, can I have a quick second to read part of the Crackle summary?
Oh, of course.
Okay, go ahead. You do your thing.
So, most movie covers, VHS, DVD, what have you, have a description of the film on the back. Most of them. Unless they're oddball films or bootleg. There was so little thought put into rushing this out onto home video that the front of the movie has a quote from Joel Siegel that says, "Elegant go-for-the-throat suspense thriller." And the back of it has a quote from Gene Shalit, "One howl of a movie." And that's all there is.
That's hilarious. I love stuff like that.
Yeah. Gene Shalit. You couldn't have at least picked a somewhat more reputable reviewer who didn't put puns into everything.
So, speaking of the summary, I watched this on Crackle like you told me to because it was free, and I didn't know Crackle was free, so thank you for that. Crackle summarized this movie as, quote, a literate and ambitious wolf story. To me, that says it's pretty bad, but at least they tried. It was such a great summary.
It is very literary and ambitious, and I'll get into that in just a moment.
No, it didn't say literary. It said literate. Like the movie can read. And I don't know if it was a pun based on what you're about to get to, but I really don't think Crackle was going for that.
Yeah, I doubt they dug that deep. But
yeah,
Wolf is essentially about a man named Will Randall, played by none other than Jack Nicholson. He has simply given up on life, on everything. His career, his future, himself, and to some degree his own marriage. While driving home one snowy winter night, he hits an animal with his car. When he gets out to check on it, he discovers a wolf who immediately bites him. And then,
by check on it, he poked it with a stick.
Yeah, pretty much. After that, we find out all the basic details of his shitty life I just told you, and the fact that it's only going to get worse. Or is it? Not if the full moon and a raging affection for Michelle Pfeiffer has anything to do with it. Pretty soon, Will's life turns around, and he decides for the first time in years to actually fight back against the world and take back the reins. Starting, of course, by rekindling the romance in his marriage and telling the villain of the piece, a much younger colleague gunning for his job, James Spader. And then there's the minor inconvenience of gradually turning into a wolf at night, growing mutton chops, and waking up beside deer carcasses in the morning. Things only get worse when Jack Nicholson bites James Spader after taking a piss on his shoes. And that's essentially the gist of the main plot.
Yeah, you pretty much covered all of it.
Yeah. I tried to break it down into the simple bullet points here.
I'm looking for a specific quote. It's not here. But the quote that the first thing Jack Nicholson says to the group of people at the dinner party in the beginning.
Yeah, every upscale magazine tries to make the case that the world will end if we have no rainforests.
Well, you could make a case that the world has already ended, that art is dead. We're exhausted. That instead of art, we have pop culture, daytime TV, gay senior citizens, women who've been raped by their dentists confiding in Oprah. An exploration in depth of why women cut off their husband's penis.
Well, time to fill up the glass.
Yes.
So, Corey, I've been trying to figure out for years why I really can't love this movie. I watch it every year because I keep thinking to myself, well, maybe I was wrong. And, I finally figured it out on this watch that it's because a lot of the film works really well, but the really good parts are so rushed that the final product feels like it's only half there. Sort of felt the same way about Frozen, but since this wasn't an animated film, it shouldn't have quite had the same problem.
Plus, Frozen is a movie about a kingdom completely destroying another kingdom's economy, but that's neither here nor there.
Oh, that's what you think Frozen is about, huh?
Everybody in Frozen is terrible, but we'll focus on Wolf.
To give you a good idea of how engaging this film is, I spent about 5 minutes polishing up my notes today before recording, and then 30 minutes watching Peter Pan peanut butter commercials on YouTube.
Sorry, that was such a weird laugh, but I was muted and it took me by surprise. So I had to unmute to make sure you knew I was laughing, and I bumped it twice because I was laughing so hard.
On the one hand, I rediscovered my love for Peter Pan peanut butter in the process of studying this film. If anyone other than Jack Nicholson played the lead, I probably wouldn't have been able to watch it. And James Spader mentioned in a brief interview on the film's premiere night that Jack was perfect typecasting and was in fact even more wolfy than his character.
I can imagine.
Yeah, this movie even has the late Om Puri, one of the most talented actors of Indian cinema in the last 30 years. How can I not like an Om Puri movie? I love Om Puri. I've even loved his really boring independent films about obscure Urdu writers who cheat on their wives. I mean, I can stand a bad Om Puri movie. I just couldn't really stand this one.
Yeah, that dude was great. That's the expert that is dying and asked. Yeah. The other weird thing about this movie is Ennio Morricone did the music and it sucked. Like, I need to rewatch it. Like, the love music stuff was pretty bad. I can't remember the rest of the music. Maybe I like that, but there's more. I noticed more bad Morricone music than I did good.
It's funny you say that because I didn't think his music was bad. I just thought it was inappropriate for the scenes it was in. It was too much for the moment.
Maybe that's a better way to put it.
Yeah. He was trying to compose basically kind of almost epic kind of tunes over flat sequences.
Yeah.
And that made it look even more glaring and ridiculous.
And another thing that was weird about this is I really did enjoy watching it. I didn't think I would. I actually have a note here that says 2 hours and 5 minutes, Maddie. You're killing me.
Oh my gosh. I made a note that says 2 hours, 2 goddamn hours and 5 minutes.
Nice. So, I mean, it could be my TV, or it could be the year it was made, or it could be the budget, but it felt really low budget too. All the sets looked super fake. They looked like sets. Anytime somebody was behind, most of the car interior scenes looked fake. I know movies are fake, but they're not supposed to look that fake.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was just, there was something off about the production design in this film too.
Yeah, especially given the cast. I mean, you've got James Spader, you've got Jack Nicholson. You've got Michelle Pfeiffer. You've got Kate Nelligan, and even Richard Jenkins and Christopher Plummer, David Hyde Pierce. There's no reason that they wouldn't have had space to increase their budget for the film.
Well, maybe that's why, because they spent all their money on their cast. They even had a young David Schwimmer.
As a cop.
Yeah. He I looked it up, and this was the same year that Friends released. So I assume this was the last like little thing he did before Friends.
It's possible.
Yeah.
I love David Schwimmer. I think he has incredible comic timing. Can you imagine if he'd been the villain in this film? Oh,
that would be weird, because that actually brings me to another point. I thought that everybody, like all the main players in this film, really did the best they could with what they had. Spader got to be creepy, and he played that well, although I couldn't. Yeah, once he got the contacts, though, I had a little trouble focusing on him, and I was just focusing on those eyes, because his eyes are so piercing already.
And they just amped it up.
Yeah, just making his eyes a weirder type of piercing was difficult for me.
I actually kind of liked that. I thought it was funny because, like, even the cops who were interviewing him seemed weirded out by him, and I thought it was really funny.
Yeah. Wouldn't I be weirded out about him, too, if I was, like, creeping up next to your ear, if I was a cop and, like, James Spader was whispering in my ear, like, that was some Lady Macbeth type shit. It was so weird.
Yeah. It's like, not only was he trying to molest Michelle Pfeiffer, he was trying to molest the cops, too. He was trying to molest Michael Jenkins.
He was just all over everybody in that movie.
After some minor research, I finally found what I think is the real problem with this movie. Pretentious initial screenwriter, Jim Harrison, and pretentious director, Mike Nichols. I'm sorry, I appreciate The Graduate for what it was, but you can't tell me that Mike Nichols and The Graduate weren't both very pretentious. They just simply couldn't agree on a vision. The writer actually walked off the set because, well, 1, the makeup looked like crap, and 2, Jim wanted the wolf to be, and I quote, Dionysian, while Mike wanted it to be Apollonian. As far as I can explain this without a 3-hour lecture on philosophy I don't care to explore, Dionysian writing is more about chaos and connection with mankind. Apollonian is more critical, distancing you from the story. Think of it like tabletop games. Lawful good, neutral, or Apollonian, and any and all chaotic alignments are Dionysian. A philosophy like that doesn't really belong in a film like this.
For sure.
Too much thought with too little money, really.
Yeah. And this didn't really have the script to back all that up either. There wasn't a whole lot to work with there. But I would like to go back to the effects real quick. You didn't like the Wolfman stuff?
Not at all. I thought it looked absolutely terrible. It just looked like Jack Nicholson forgot to shave.
Yeah, I definitely think it could have been better, but I kind of like the way they did it. I at least, not necessarily once they really got hairy, but a little earlier on in the beginning transformations, I thought those were actually pretty well done.
You could probably have slicked his hair back and given him sunglasses, and you would have known he had changed to a completely different person.
Yeah, that's true. And to be fair, I did just get off a 2-week-long binge of Teen Wolf, so my opinion on werewolf makeup might be a little skewed.
Well, as far as the writing goes, Elaine May, who has worked with Mike Nichols a lot, they even worked together on The Birdcage. She seemed to do what she could to fix the script, so that may account for the actual really witty bits, because there's a lot of wit in this.
Yeah, I have a note on that too. There's definitely a lot of funny bits.
Yeah, and they were originally comedy partners together, so she brings some great humor into the script. Probably, I'm assuming all the better parts of the film were probably written by her. I think.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
I think everything pretty much went downhill after Jack's first transformation, and it felt like an entirely different film. It was too structured for the werewolf element to even be in it. I think it would have been better as a strict drama.
Yeah, I can see that, where they would have instead of the wolf bite, something else inspired that confidence. I could see that working a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, I really loved the angle of this being a broken man and then having this sort of emotional transformation and finding himself again. It could have been like Jack Nicholson gets his groove back.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, instead it's Jack Nicholson grows some more hair.
Yeah, the first act definitely worked better than the second.
And I'm sorry, is New York publishing really that cutthroat? Because they make it very dramatic in this film.
I guess it could be. I mean, especially back, like, it's a little different now that there's so much self-publishing going on and ebooks are a thing, but it wouldn't, I mean, there was, back in the day, before the young adult explosion, I don't think there were as many authors selling really well. You know what I mean? So I think I can see publishers fighting over certain authors.
Do you think the audience of the time would have identified with that kind of business in particular, or would have made more sense for it to be something like the stock market, something more business related?
Yeah, it would have made more sense if it was finance related or law, or it would have made a lot more sense if it was a law firm, or an ad agency.
I also think the main failure in the film was just escalation. They didn't do it right, they didn't do it fast enough, and it didn't get intense enough until the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's very true.
Other than that, great movie.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I didn't hate it this time around, so...
Yeah, and I didn't mean to be so vicious towards the film. It's just, I'm finally kind of getting down to the meat of what didn't work for me on Wolf. This time next year, I'll probably watch it again, because I'll think maybe I was wrong.
Yeah, and you'll probably tell me to, and I'll do it again as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if you're ready for them, I have a few thoughts.
I am ready. Let's go.
So yeah, it's super predictable too. I don't know if we touched on that.
We did not, but I agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious from the moment they called him a protege that Spaders' character was gunning for Nicholson's job.
Mm-hmm. And
the affair.
Fact that he's Spader.
Oh yeah, and the fact that he's Spader, and again, because he's Spader, you saw the affair coming as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as his wife was murdered, you knew, like, you go right back to that bite.
And the shoe pissing.
Spader did. Yeah, and the shoe pissing and all that. Yeah, and you know how some people seem old forever? I just realized that Jack Nicholson has always been an old man. Like, he even seems old. Oh, why am I spacing that biker movie? The one with Dennis Hopper and Peter Fonda.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, he's actually young in that, and he seems old. It's crazy.
Well, I mean, he's young in Little Shop of Horrors in his little bit role, and he still seems old.
That's true. So when you say that he was called Wolfie on set, do you think that has anything to do with him touching Michelle Pfeiffer's boobs in her prime? No, seriously, like that, like people get Wolfie. That's the kind of shit they do. That's just what I assumed.
Oh, that movie was Easy Rider, by the way.
Easy Rider. Jesus.
You know what? If it was Jack Nicholson, I don't think anyone would be surprised.
Yeah.
And you know what? Out of all of the gross old men out there, I think he's one I'd give a pass. You know, it's like, oh, it's just Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, as long as he didn't do anything too horrible, I agree.
Mm-hmm. And he could just raise those eyebrows at you, and that would be it.
There was one master-crafted joke, I thought. Like you said, there's a lot of funny bits, but there was one joke that was just so masterfully done and executed that I absolutely loved it. Mm-hmm. The whole tequila thing. Yeah. Like, they set that up over, like, 3 scenes, and it worked so well for me. I really liked that.
You didn't have coffee this morning.
Yeah, that was great. Watching Jack Nicholson bite James Spader was one of the oddest experiences of my life.
It was an interesting fight, to be sure.
Yeah, that was so weird. Which reminds me of some of the cuts in this film. That first cut where they cut from the growling into Jack Nicholson gargling. That was a terrible choice. Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, they made a lot of terrible choices.
Yeah, they did.
It almost feels like maybe a different director, someone who knew how to handle horror and not drama.
Yeah, I think so, but I also think that script would have needed a little more work for it to really
work on the action sequences and the escalation.
Yeah, and maybe push the wolf a little more than they did.
Maybe I could fix it with a fan fiction.
Oh, I think you could. I think you definitely could. But you won't let me read any of your fan fiction, so I don't know for sure.
You know my username.
That's true. I could find it.
You have to earn it. You have to do your own digging.
I will look around. All right, so I have a few more. Some of these are just random things I noticed, too, as usual. Mm-hmm. When they're in... what's Michelle Pfeiffer's character's name again?
She's so forgettable in this film.
Well, it doesn't matter.
She's
then.
Michelle Pfeiffer playing Sharon Stone.
Yeah, exactly.
Her character's name is Laura.
So when they're in Laura's house, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, for the first time. Nicholson's looking at her photos. Did you by chance notice that one creepy child in the mask? It was a really weird picture.
I did not.
It's worth going back to that scene just to see this picture, because you've got all these childhood photos of Laura, and then you have what I can only assume it's her. You have her in this, like, I remember it as overalls with this sort of Friday the 13th Part 1 bag mask over her head.
But
it's super creepy and out of place. You should definitely go back.
But doesn't it make sense in the context of being Christopher Plummer's daughter?
Yeah, you know what, it does. It does. Oh, yeah. So two more things. One, so this movie sort of has a happy ending, right?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
slapdash happy ending, yeah.
Yeah. Jack Nicholson wolfs out fully and runs off into the night, and then Michelle Pfeiffer's character Laura is infected, and she's going to turn into a wolf. So she's going to go find Wolf Jack, and they're going to do wolfy stuff for all of wolf time.
And then they'll probably get hit by a car and spread it to a new couple.
You know, I was trying really hard not to go there, but as I was writing that note down, I almost ended it with that. But luckily, you got it. So, yeah, my final thing is, so our movies are kind of opposite of each other. Mine is a movie about a dog that gets bit by a bat and goes nuts. Yours is about people who get bit by wolves and get confident and then mean, depending on who they are.
I would argue that yours is about a fractured family.
Oh, yeah. We'll get there. I was just specifically talking about
definitely. Where the inciting incident is a bite in both films.
Right.
And in the first 2 pages, actually.
Yeah.
And they both have awkward endings.
That's true. That's very true. But we'll get to that. But that was, and remind me, because I don't remember if I took notes on it, but I want to discuss the epilogue to my film in my head too. All right. So audience, my movie is Cujo, but I have a couple of things I would like to admit before we start.
Oh, boy.
Apparently, yeah. So I had never seen this movie before.
Really?
Yeah, I for the first, and I know you do this, Maddie. For the first time ever, I joined the Reddit Secret Santa thing.
Oh, really? Which one did you do?
I did the Christmas one.
Oh, okay.
The reason I say this is because my Reddit Secret Santa, if you're out there, thank you so much, got me the first 2 Hellraisers.
Nice.
A Pinhead pop vinyl. I'm not into pop vinyl, but I really like my Pinhead pop vinyl. He sat inside my computer for a while. Now he sits on my shelf. But he also got me Cujo on Blu-ray.
Nice.
Yeah, which I had not seen before. And this dude wasn't a horror fan. He's just like, I hear people dig this, and Cujo's one of my favorites, so have this stuff. And it was awesome. So thank you if you're out there, which you probably aren't because you're not a horror fan.
You saved Corey $10 this week. Right.
So, yeah, I haven't read this book, nor had I seen this movie before. I have no idea how that's possible, and I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, Cujo is a movie about a dog that gets rabies from a bat after chasing a rabbit into a small cave. He doesn't get the medical treatment he needs, nay, deserves, because he's so neglected by the adults in his life. He gets worse and worse until finally the killing begins. I say killing like this is a dog slasher film, but there's only a body count of 3. A decent chunk of this movie kind of sucks. The beginning is mostly about the Trentons, a family that seems fine on the outside, other than the father being a little bit of a dick to his kid after being awoken late at night to prove that closet monsters don't exist. Though I can understand that. I don't have kids, but I'm 90% sure I'd stop loving them if they woke me up late at night all the time, which they do. All of them, apparently. And now back to our story. This is the second time I've been mean about children this episode.
You really don't like kids, Corey.
I like kids, but I like to be able to give them back to their parents when I'm done with them.
Well, think about all the terror you could bring them.
That's true. I would raise some monsters of children, though. I really would.
And that's one of the many reasons that being a parent is truly rewarding.
I guess you're right. So I say this family is fine on the outside because on the inside, the wife is cheating on her husband with the carpenter, who's played by Christopher Stone from another doggy movie called, you might have heard of it, Maddie, The Howling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Dee Wallace was also in that too.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
And another note, they were married.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah.
Ooh, so that made that weird abusey rapey scene even more awkward. But we'll get to that too.
Either that or super fun. You don't know what they were into.
That's a good point. Who am I to judge?
We support you.
We do support you. So I guess they hired this guy to redo their furniture, which kind of bothers me because most of this plot happens because this upper class family is just using the lower classes for whatever they need without any thought of consequence. Did you catch that by chance?
I can see that viewpoint. Yeah.
Okay. I get to more of it in a minute. So Daniel U. Kelly plays the dad who has enough money to drive a fancy convertible and live in a big house. He doesn't feel like he should have to wait for a mechanic to finish the cars that got there before him and are ahead of his midlife crisis mobile. So after listening to the advice of the nerdiest mailman in all of history, he packs his family into his little red penis car and off to a sketchy farm in the middle of nowhere they go. This is where they first meet Cujo, who is not quite evil yet. He's already been bitten. He's getting a little weird, but he's not quite evil yet.
And St. Bernards are known to be the sweetest, most caring breed of dog on the planet.
Mm-hmm. They are so great.
Slobbery, but...
Yeah. We also meet the Cambers, the patriarch Joe Camber, played by Ed Lauter, who has been in literally every movie ever made, apparently, is most definitely knocking around his wife and son off camera. Although that is never seen or mentioned, it is well hinted in the fear in his wife's eyes every time he's near. She plays that so well. Like you don't even have to know it because you can just see how scared she is.
Mm-hmm. Just asking to visit her family is an ordeal.
Yeah. So the Deus Ex lottery kicks in and she wins $5,000, buys her husband some tools, and takes the kid to visit her sister for the rest of the movie. And I think that's because she was leaving an abusive man. I don't think she ever planned to come back. Mm-hmm. So we never see them again. Some say to this day, they think Cujo and Dad are still alive, playing poker and talking about chlamydia with their weird neighbor Gary, who easily has the best line in the movie. As he's being attacked by Cujo on his front porch, he says this.
Come on! I don't give a shit! Hear me! I don't give a shit!
I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. I absolutely love that part.
I'm not exactly sure who reacts that way when they're being mauled by a large dog.
I think a guy who absolutely hates his life and truly does not give a shit. Like that's what I got from that. I thought it was great.
Aside from the main storyline, I have a question for you that maybe you could answer because you're a little older than me, Corey. Why was that mom cut so popular? It was
the
not
short hair
flattering.
thing?
Yeah, it was not flattering at all.
I think it was a matter of time. This is actually, this is a little before my time. This is 83, so I would have been 6.
Mm-hmm. So it would have been your mom's cut.
Yeah, actually, I think my mom had long hair back then. Mm-hmm. But I think that, you know how there's that ask to see the manager haircut that we have now? Yeah. I think that is the 80s version of that haircut.
Oh, it's hard to say which one looks worse.
Right, I agree. I think it's moms have that haircut because it's easy to manage and they're chasing children around. That's what I assume. But you're right, it's awful.
This movie is certainly very heartbreaking on many levels.
Yeah, it really is. I think I get to that. We'll see. I might not get to that. Who knows?
You might not get to the heart of the film.
Yeah. So the movie spends more time setting up Cujo's illness and general poor behavior, as well as spending more time forcing us to watch the Trentons' lives spin out of control. Donna, the mother, played by Dee Wallace, breaks it off with a carpenter. He takes it poorly, gets rapey and abusive just as Daddy Trenton returns home early from work. Carpenter Steve then makes a hasty retreat, and Vic, the husband, has this exchange with his wife.
Go ahead and ride your bike, Ted.
Are you okay, Mom?
Go on.
Yeah, honey, I'm okay. Go ride your bike.
I brought your table, but I spilled some...
Yes or no?
Yes.
And that is such an amazing scene to me because it's so subtle as opposed to the rest of the film that with those words, they both know exactly where they stand at that moment. I thought it was so well done.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Like what else needed to be said there?
And that's the power of acting and solid writing and directing.
Yeah, for sure.
You don't have to say everything.
Exactly. So both the lottery and the adultery are a means to get half the cast out of the picture so the movie can truly shine, which it does in the second act. Donna and her son Tad, played by Danny Pintuaro, who has done very little of note since Cujo other than stints in As the World Turns and Who's the Boss. They limp their broken down crap car to the camera farm to be repaired, where they find everyone gone and Cujo more gooey and crazy than ever before. Mm-hmm. And this dog is super goopy. Like, the crazier he gets, the goopier he gets.
He's like Beethoven right before he jumps on the bed.
For sure. Oh, it's so gross. And what a patient animal that Saint Bernard must have been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so. And
yeah.
The action sequences when he's getting his just desserts, if you will, are really done well, delivered with the camera shots.
Yeah. I think I cover a little bit of that a little later on, I think, too. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this leaves them trapped in the car with a crazy dog on the outside, starvation, dehydration, heat stroke, and death on the inside. The claustrophobia, sweat, blood, and filth join to create a sense of impending dread I rarely see in movies. From then till now, like, this is one of the few times that I thought for sure this was going to have a very dark ending. And it kind of does, though it wasn't the dark ending I expected. Like, I had no idea how these people were going to survive.
There's a sort of suspense it creates that I don't feel with many movies, and I definitely agree. And the only other movie I can think of that kind of makes your heart stop a little as the characters' emotions build up, even though it's a completely different style of story, is 12 Angry Men. When Fonda is making the argument and limping around the room to show them, like, to prove that the old man couldn't have gotten to the door in time. That's the exact same feeling I got in the pit of my stomach when I watched basically the child passing out in the car and then the mom covered in blood, and you thought, is she going to wake up? I mean, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah. It's been a long time since I've seen that. I think I've seen the play, too. That is the same as 12 Angry Jurors, right?
Probably, yeah. And
yeah, I think so.
Gosh, I wish I could remember the Hindi word for 12, but there's a decent Bollywood version, too.
Oh, that's cool. So, yeah, I kind of have an epilogue to this. We're to my final thoughts section, if you didn't notice. But I kind of have an epilogue to this whole thing. Let me see where I put it. Looking for some stuff because my notes suck.
In the meantime, I will say this. Stephen King doesn't actually remember writing much of this one. This was towards the tail end of his drug binging, and he was pretty much on cocaine almost the entirety of the process when he wrote the novel that this film is based on.
Yeah, so apparently this comes from Stephen King having an experience with a mean dog at a remote farm when getting one of his motorcycles repaired. Like, he actually was scared of a dog and wrote this because of it. And I hear this kind of thing about him all the time, so I feel like this poor guy must be so full of fear he can barely function some days. And it's no wonder he had such a long cocaine and booze period. Like, the dude was dealing with some demons, man.
Well, it's known that he basically wrote stuff so fast that he had to write a few things under some nom de plumes just because they wouldn't accept his drafts under his actual name.
Oh, is that why he...
Because he was just writing too fast.
This movie ends very suddenly, but I don't think it ends happily. I think that this poor kid has got years and years of therapy to not become normal, but to even function in society again. Yeah. The parents are definitely going to get a divorce. And on that note, it occurs to me that this movie may never have happened if instead of buying that red sports car, Daddy Vic could have bought two newer, more sensible vehicles, a point which the wife should definitely bring up in the divorce hearings because she's got a lot to answer for, and I think that this can really help her out.
It's interesting that that's how you viewed the ending, because for me personally, I thought after, first of all, her side enduring this terror in her life, and after his side of coming home, seeing blood on the car, and then seeing his wife stumbling out of the house with his unconscious child covered in her own blood, I would think that would have been a startling enough moment for him to kind of come to terms with what she had done adultery-wise and realize in the face of everything, he still loves her. And it's really not important when it comes to, her and the child's life. I think it would have been a very sobering moment for them, and they certainly have some hardships in the future, but I don't see a divorce being...
I don't know. I would like the romantic in me, well, the nearly dead romantic in me, would like to think that you're right, but after the novelty of the tragedy wears off, I think that maybe they'll try to patch it up, but I think this little bit of distrust and this little bit of self-esteem issues that cheating causes is just going to build in poor Vic's head until finally he's had enough, and he's just going to be like, we're done, which is going to screw up Tad even more. This kid's probably a serial killer now. In fact, all of Stephen King's movies these days are in this shared universe, I guess. I wonder if maybe Tad is actually the Man in Black now or something.
Well, what's funny is, not to cheat, but if you like to believe that if a movie ends before the end of the book went, but the end of the book still applies, there's an epilogue in the book, and they're still together.
How long down the road?
A few months, like maybe almost a year.
Yeah. See, I think that's when it's starting to creep in. I think that's when the trust issues are starting to come back. I think he's starting to remember. The first year is always the hardest. They're starting to get over the tragedy.
Wait, are you saying the first cut is the deepest?
Not out loud. Never out loud. Will I ever say that? So I absolutely love the music in this movie. I'm a sucker for good synth, and this had a lot of that mixed with some actual instruments. I thought it was really well done, except for the loving family theme. It was just entirely too late 70s, early 80s cheese.
I mean, I think it worked for the story they were trying to portray of like a picture perfect family and then showing that they really aren't picture perfect in the least. I think like it was not only one of his simplest, but his most complex portrayals of a family together.
Yeah, I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. Mm-hmm. I still disagree about the music, but I will give you that. I do think that it's really hard to do that kind of a loving sort of family underscore theme that he was going to and keep with the sort of more synthesized score.
That is true. Yeah, the contrast is odd.
Like and sometimes the contrast works, and it can work. I just don't feel like it worked here.
Yeah, like Ravenous has the best soundtrack on the planet.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I love Ravenous. Note to self, put Ravenous in one of the episodes.
Definitely.
I've got a fan fiction.
Of course. Is this like a Guy Pearce and Begbie from Trainspotting shipping thing?
It's a pairing of Guy Pearce and No, I'm just kidding. Guy Pearce and Robert Carlyle.
That's Begbie. That's what I meant.
Oh, I thought you were referring to...
No, I just forgot his name.
Yeah, I'm sorry. For some reason, I thought you were talking about Neil McDonough.
Oh, no. Good writer, though.
Yeah. Such a good
Robert Carlyle was the whole reason I watched, I almost said Frozen. What the hell was that Disney TV show called?
Enchanted?
Wasn't it? No. The one that was on TV.
Once Upon a Time.
The reason I watched Once Upon a Time so long was because of Rumpelstiltskin. Mm-hmm. Speaking of movies... So a few more thoughts. I really like the way they did the credits. I like the blood swirling around the title. That worked really well for me. I thought it looked cool, and I thought it was really simple.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. It was effective, short, and memorable.
Yeah, and a little bit jarring too. Like it gave me some weird feelings.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it was. I don't know. It was just unsettling. There was just something unsettling about it.
Mm. Yeah, it was definitely getting you ready for something pretty dark.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if that rabbit survived the opening scene, because there was definitely that Saint Bernard chasing down that rabbit, and I can't imagine that Saint Bernard didn't get that rabbit at one point.
Well, who knows? I know the rabbit wasn't barking like at a bunch of bats.
Yeah.
I actually kind of wanted to like cry when I heard the dog yelping.
Yeah, that was, I really don't like when animals get hurt in movies. I have trouble watching the first John Wick because of that.
On that note, though, I think they were really responsible, again, back to the effects they did for how the dog was behaving. I thought they were very responsible in how they displayed the violence committed by and towards the dog.
Yeah, I think so too. And speaking on the effects, I think that the dog puppet works when it's used, probably because of the camera cuts. They kind of did the Jaws thing where the less they show of the puppet, the better.
Well, I think that's the only way you can make really effective special effects work is a combination of the effects and good camera work.
Oh, for sure. But and that dog, I didn't do any research on it, but that dog itself must have been a genius to be trained to do all that stuff. He was definitely up there with the highest tier actors. Like, he was definitely the D. Wallace of dogs.
Well, Saint Bernards are actually a really intelligent breed.
Yeah, that's because that's why they were trained to wear the whiskey around their necks and run around looking for people trapped in the snow back in the day.
And that's why, I mean, in Peter Pan, the nanny is a Saint Bernard. I mean, come on.
Is it really?
Yeah. You never noticed?
It's been a minute.
And I'm just amazed that community theaters everywhere can find such smart Saint Bernards at what must be like very short notice.
Yeah, I think, and actually I touch upon that. In fact, you know what? I'll just tell this story real quick.
Dude, I was making a joke. It's a man in a costume.
Oh, okay. Shit, never mind.
No, go
I was
on.
gonna say, because I have one friend with a Saint Bernard that's super smart and super sweet, but my neighbor, who was a complete dick to me and my friends in high school, and he was one of those rich kids that like to pick on the like poor and the weird.
Was he the dad from Beethoven?
I've never seen Beethoven.
Well, you should.
I'll put that on the list. So yeah, this guy was a complete dick to me in high school. He has a beautiful Saint Bernard. He lives down the street from me now. The dog's out. The dog's taller than his children. It's so funny. This dog looks exactly like Cujo, and I don't wish crazy vampire bat rabies on the dog, nor do I wish him and his children to be eaten. It was just an observation. But a friend of mine once threw a cup of glass, like a cup of broken glass, in this dude's face. No, he totally deserved it, because it was in the middle of like him and his crew, like threatening to beat three of us up. And these were like big muscle bound jock guys. Like, it was crazy. He had been like during, it's my friend Jim. He's a little bit off. But this guy, like, there was an argument happening, and during the argument, he had been picking up broken glass in this parking lot, and nobody was paying attention to him. And then when it started to get super heated and the pushing started, Jim just rolled up to the dude and threw this giant 32-ounce Sheetz cup of broken glass in his face, and we all took off. It was, I mean, nobody really got hurt. It was a typical high school fight, but it was so hilarious.
That sounds like something in a bad teen comedy.
Yeah, and I see this guy and I'm not going to say it because I don't want people to know the fundraisers I'm affiliated with, but I see him at fundraisers now because he's a rich guy who's guilty for it, I think. And yeah, it's always very awkward.
So what you're saying is that his dog is Cujo.
Yeah, basically I'm saying his dog's Cujo, but a very nice, like Cujo before he was bit. So
that's good. Kind of like Where Are They Now before the bad part.
Exactly. Before the heroin. So my last bit here is probably the most annoying thing about the movie for me. Daddy Trenton finds evidence of his wife's infidelity in the most trite, stupid way possible. He's driving past Steve the carpenter's house and he sees them arguing outside. Steve is, of course, not wearing his shirt because he's of lower class, and that's what they do in public. That drove me nuts. Like, the timing it would take to be in this town and to drive past And for them to be out there and for him to be noticeable because he doesn't have a shirt on, that just threw me out of the world of the film and drove me crazy.
Listen, you working class people need to lighten up.
Hey, it's not me. My shirt is on right now.
It's a simple, quick way to convey it, but there certainly could have been more clever. They were clever with other emotional elements of the film. It seems... Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I thought everything about this movie was great once they got her car to the farm. Everything before I could care less about. I understand why it was there. Mm-hmm. I hated the scene where Carpenter Steve went and trashed the house because the only reason that's there is to throw the search party off of the farm, and that just, it's been long enough. It just irritated me.
Forced.
You know, you didn't need, yeah, it was very forced.
Mm-hmm.
But there you go, folks. Unless Maddie has anything else, that is my take on Cujo, the killer dog movie.
Well, I had already pretty much mentioned that it was a complex but very simple story, and you said pretty much just about spot on everything I could have focused on. In fact, the only thing of note I had that I'd written down was the part about Christopher Stone and Dee Wallace being married.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a really good movie, and it was certainly a different tone than the first film. Completely different tone.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
As a result, it made an interesting double feature.
Yeah, I was glad. I watched Cujo last night.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I watched Wolf this morning, and I think watching them so close together and having them be so opposite of each other, it was really good timing on my part to watch them when I did.
Yeah, and we might even do something like that in the future, just so things don't get too heavy or too light.
So just for funsies, I looked up, well, I agree with you. Yes. Mm-hmm. I like that idea. But I just looked up Louis League, the director, real quick, and he directed Cat's Eye as well, which is another partial Stephen King adaptation. Jewel of the Nile and Wedlock. Are you familiar with Wedlock?
Ooh, I'd have to look it up. Is that a mid-'80s, like, drama, comedy?
No, it's sci-fi. If I remember it correctly, it stars Rutger Hauer, and when you get married... Or no, maybe it's not when you get married. It's you go to prison for some dystopian reason. You get a necklace that is hooked up to another person's necklace by, well, it was radio back then. It would be like Wi-Fi or Bluetooth now. And if you get too far away from them, your head explodes. So it's about two of these people escaping from this prison with their necklaces on.
I kind of want to see that. I love Rutger Hauer.
It's worth it, and it's pretty great. Well, I mean, it's pretty terrible, but Rutger Hauer's in it, and the woman looks very familiar, too. It's
Mimi Rogers.
Oh, Mimi Rogers, yeah.
I might explore that film.
Maybe we should do a sci-fi side project. We always veer that way.
We do, don't we? I wouldn't mind it.
Yeah, maybe once once a month, if we can find time, we'll do like a sci-fi episode, as well as... Like, we'll do like a mini-sode and a sci-fi episode, maybe.
I'm all for it, dude. All right, so any concluding statements, Corey, before we finally stumble into that tavern and I can hopefully staunch the blood from flowing that is slowly making me get a little woozy here?
No, I think I'm good, but I am wondering, have you always had those sideburns?
So you can find our blog at hallow-holic.blogspot.com or hallow-holic.wordpress.com.
You can also find us on Twitter. You can search for Hallow-Holics or at Nowhere23.
And our email, if you'd like to contact us and correct Corey for anything at all, it's Hallow-Holics@outlook.com.
There you go.
And
I mean, I don't mean there you go. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. And now I'm passing out.
Right now, is your blood sugar low?
That's a wrap.